All right, let's dive into one of the most consequential, most debated decisions in all of human history, the call to use the atomic bomb. It's a moment that brought a world war to an end, but it also unleashed a power that would, well, haunt us forever. Our story starts in the final, peaceful moments before the sky itself literally fell, and the very nature of war was changed for all time.
Picture this. It's a clear Monday morning over Hiroshima. The summer sun is shining, kids are just settling into their first class of the day, and adults are walking into their offices, just starting another typical work week.
But high above the city, an object drops from an American B-29 bomber. For exactly 43 seconds, it just falls, silently, toward the city center. Down below, if anyone even noticed it, they could never, ever have imagined what it was. And then, in a single instant, a blinding flash, the bomb detonates, creating a fireball with ground temperatures hitting a staggering 4,000 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than the surface of the sun. People were vaporized so fast that the only thing left was their shadows, literally burned into stone. The blast, the heat wave, it killed an estimated 80,000 people. Just gone. In the blink of an eye, a city was simply erased from the map. Even the man who led the team that created the bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer, he knew what a terrifying power they'd just unleashed. When he watched that first test, he wasn't celebrating, he was haunted, recalling this ancient, chilling line from scripture. So the big question is, right, how on earth did we get to this point? To really understand the answer, we have to rewind all the way back to the beginning of a war that had already swallowed the entire globe. So to get the bomb, you first have to understand the path to total war. This was a conflict that had already engulfed the entire planet. Okay, so World War II is raging between two massive alliances. You've got Hitler's Germany tearing through Europe, while at the same time, Imperial Japan is aggressively building its own empire across Asia. Now, the US is trying to stay out of it, but to stop Japan's expansion, it hits them with these crippling economic sanctions, cutting off 80% of their oil supply, a huge deal. So, with its economy on the brink of collapse and totally unwilling to give up its imperial dreams, Japan makes a fateful, massive gamble. They launch this devastating surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. The goal? Cripple the American fleet and secure their dominance in the Pacific. And just like that, a reluctant America was pulled right into the war. All right, let's fast forward to 1945. Germany and Italy, they've surrendered. The war in Europe is finally over. But in the Pacific, Japan is a whole different story. Despite loss after loss, they refuse to surrender, vowing to fight to the very last person. The entire ideology of the Japanese military was built on this brutal death before dishonor philosophy. And the most famous, most chilling example of this, the kamikaze pilots. Their mission was to literally turn their own planes into guided missiles in suicide attacks. Surrender, to them, was the ultimate humiliation. And if you want to know what that fight-to-the-end mentality looked like in practice, just look at the Battle of Okinawa. 12,000, that's how many American soldiers were killed taking this one tiny island just south of Japan. It was a terrifying, bloody preview of what a full-scale invasion of the mainland would look like. So this is the absolute nightmare scenario that lands on the desk of the new U.S. President, Harry Truman. He'd just taken office a few months earlier after Roosevelt died, and now he was facing this, well, an almost unimaginable dilemma. His military advisors lay out two options, and honestly, both of them are horrific. Option 1, Operation Downfall, a massive ground invasion. They figured, based on the bloodshed at Okinawa, it could cost over 1 million American lives and drag on for years. Option 2, this top-secret new weapon, the atomic bomb. A power so new nobody really knew its long-term effects, but it might just force a sudden end to the whole war. So the Allies gave Japan one last warning, the Potsdam Declaration. It demanded unconditional surrender, or else Japan would face prompt and utter destruction. The Japanese leadership rejected the ultimatum, and with that, President Truman gave the order. And that decision set in motion the final, devastating sequence of events that would finally bring the deadliest war in human history to a close. Now, here's what's truly wild. Even after Hiroshima is completely wiped off the map, Japan's military leadership still refuses to yield. So 3 days later, two more huge things happen.
First, the Soviet Union declares war on Japan and invades their territory in China. Then, just hours after that, the US drops a second, even more powerful bomb on the city of Nagasaki. So, facing total destruction from the air and an invasion on the ground, the emperor himself finally steps in, breaks a deadlock in his council, and agrees to surrender.
And when the dust finally settled, the final death toll from both bombs and their aftereffects is estimated to be around 200,000 people. And you have to let this sink in. The overwhelming majority, 95%, were not soldiers. They were ordinary civilians. So here we are, decades later, and the world is still grappling with the morality of this decision. Was it a necessary evil to end a terrible war, or was it a monumental moral failure?
The debate really boils down to a few core arguments. On one side, you have people who say the bomb was a terrible but necessary choice that ultimately saved far more lives by preventing that bloody invasion. On the other side, you have people who argue that targeting civilians is a moral line that you can never cross, that the second bomb on Nagasaki was completely unnecessary, and that there had to have been other options. And these different views are still very much alive today, and they're often shaped by national experience. A poll from 1991 showed that a majority of Americans felt the bombing was justified, while a huge majority of Japanese respondents did not. That gap in how we see this event is still incredibly stark. Maybe the dilemma is best captured by this thought experiment. A psychologist once suggested that to really weigh a choice like this, a leader shouldn't just be able to push a button from far away. They should have to do a smaller but much more personal act of violence to get that greater good. It forces us to move past the abstract numbers and really confront the profound human weight of a decision that didn't just end one world war, but in doing so, ushered in the atomic age.